Hey guys, welcome back. My name is James, and a few days ago I posted a pack of PDF templates on my Etsy shop enabling you guys to create your own leather card holder out of only one piece of leather. I'll be showing you in this video how to make the 3-pocket version of this, but bear in mind that the methods and tools used and techniques will be pretty much the same whichever one of these templates you decide to create for yourself. Hopefully you'll be able to follow step by step and create something really great and long lasting for yourself, and maybe even have a really good time doing it in the process. For this build, the tools you'll be needing is the template printed at 100% scale, cutting tools with optional tool for skiving, then a ruler. I would suggest a metal ruler as it will be more resistant in case your cut slips or slides a bit, pricking irons, thread and needles, and then of course beeswax to protect the threads and help in the burnishing process. You will want as well sandpaper and a cloth, again used to get those edges nice and cleaned and burnished, and in this case gum trag or any burnishing agent of your choice, again to get those edges nicely burnished. A hammer of course, and finally your leather. Now, I tend to use 1.2mm thick vegetable tanned leather for best results. I would suggest sticking to this. The templates are made to this measurement of leather, 1.2mm, but if you are going to be using thicker leather, you can of course, but this will result in a thicker build, and you may want to leave a bit more edge at the end of your template. Just cut it a bit large on the long end of that wrap. Overall, you should be fine with any or most leathers out there, but I do suggest vegetable tanned leather to get the easiest edges, at least to start off, although a chrome tan leather will work very well as well for this build, even though getting a burnished edge may be harder, if not impossible for some leathers, but definitely you can still get a really decent leather wrapped wallet or card holder. First steps of course are going to be cutting out and gluing up your templates as indicated on the template. Then you'll want to flip your template over if you're going to be scribing on the back of the piece of leather, as everything will be reversed. If you're going to be doing scribing your cutting lines on the front piece of the leather, you do not need to flip the template unless you want to for personal preferences. Depending on how you flip it and how you turn it, your wrap will be wrapped either left to right or right to left. I like to cut my leather piece out first, leaving quite a bit of a spare if I can. This just, yes, it does increase slightly the amount of waste in my leather, which is not amazing, but it helps me get more space to then cut as it should be. And this will give you a first idea of what it should look like once it's all folded up and ready to be used. Now, one thing to mention is that you will want to be cutting the edges, the corners on the inside and outside. Now here you can see me cutting the corners on the inside just before I go ahead and sand. The sanding process helps diminish the sharpness or break the sharpness of those edges all around and prepares the edges for burnishing. I then go ahead and cut the second corner, although you could probably cut both corners at the same time. This was a slight mistake on my side, and go back to sanding. The process of burnishing leather is quite straightforward in theory, but requires a lot of patience and practice. In my case, I like to use gum trag, which will basically it's a natural gum that helps grab onto the fibers, and when you will then burnish it using friction to apply heat with your cloth, or it could be a wooden dowel or burnisher, you will then be bringing in those fibers together, and each individual fiber will grab onto the others, and along with the different keratin and oils inside the leather, as well as the gum trag or whatever burnishing agent you may be using, this will help the fibers grab onto each other and give you a very nice sleek looking edge, and really does help out quite a lot. Of course, as I mentioned, if you're using chrome tan leather, it may be next to impossible to get a nice burnished edge, in which case you may need to be painting your leather edges or just leaving them raw. It's completely up to you, and there'll be tutorials on that as well on YouTube. So if you're looking for that, go ahead and just search it on YouTube, because there are some amazing things out there. Once this is done, you can go ahead and start checking your wrap. This will do two things. The first one is it will help you get an idea of whether or not your template was correctly printed out, whether or not you're happy with the final result, if it's long enough, too short, different things like that. In my case, this mainly will help me mark out up to where I want to skive my leather. And I just simply use my nail here to mark out that point and go ahead and use my skiving tool. Now, again, this is optional. My skiving is pretty atrocious in this. It's a really tough thing to learn. You can just go ahead and use a piece of sandpaper again to rub down this area, because this will do two things. The main one, and the most important one for most people, will be simply to give the glue a place to grab onto, as it's really hard for the glue to grab onto that soft top coat of leather. By doing this, it gives a place for the glue to go and grab onto the fibers inside the leather and give it a stronger bond when you go into finally gluing it all up. The second reason you might want to skive is simply to reduce the sizes of the edges, and this can be done on the outside as I did, or done on the inside all along the piece if you want to. This is especially useful for slightly thicker leathers. I believe if you go anywhere above 1.2 or 1.3 millimeters, you really want to start looking into skiving properly all along these edges, because this will result in a much cleaner build. Give that glue a few minutes to dry until it's dry to the touch, or just barely sticky to the touch, and glue up all together, and this will give you your first good look at what your final wallet or card holder will look like. In this case, once again, we are going with the 3-pocket card holder, and I'm quite satisfied with this. So after pressing it all down, I'll leave it to dry overnight. Once it's dried, you can go ahead and clean up that final edge. I'm going to be cutting it nice and straight using my metal ruler once more, and the reason I suggest a metal ruler instead of anything else is mainly because if you get a nice cut into that ruler and it's not metal, that cut is going to really mess you up for every single time you use it really. Getting a metal ruler gives you something nice and solid you can lean up onto, and really helps out in the long run. Once you've got a clean edge, go ahead and give those edges a nice give. Just good old sanding down. Again, this will help break off those really tight edges, as well as help with the burnishing process. Scribe where your pricking line is going to be, where your stitching line is going to be, and use your pricking irons to punch through the holes. Now, if you don't have a pricking iron, don't worry, you can use an awl or basically something very sharp and thin to poke those holes in. Again, there are loads of tutorials on YouTube that will help you out figure out exactly how you want to be doing things. In my case, I'm using Maisie thread. I find that these threads are just gorgeous for stitching. Absolutely love them. I always coat them in beeswax, although they do come pre-coated, I believe, so that's not necessarily the case, but depending on what thread you're using, you may want to do this as well. This will help not only give your thread a bit more rigidity during the stitching process, which is nice, but also help protect it in the long run. I'm using a traditional saddle stitch technique here to stitch the leather together. It's quite simple to understand the basics of saddle stitching, but again is one of those things that takes a lot of time and practice to get quite right. I think I'm nearing it myself personally, and it's only been 3 years that I've been practicing. I'm only just starting to get close to where I feel comfortable with my level of stitching. Again, tons of amazing tutorials out there to help you learn that specific trait or that specific aspect of leatherworking, and I'm sure you'll figure it out quite fast enough on your own with those tutorials. Once this is done, you can go ahead and give that final edge the final burnish. I am using once more my trusty gum trag, making sure it seeps in nicely into these fibers before giving it that final burnish with the dry cloth. And as I said before, this will help seal in the fibers using the keratin that's left over in the vegetable tanned leather, as well as the gum. This really helps give your edges a very strong, gorgeous look and help protect the edges for years to come. Here's a close-up where you can clearly see the difference and clearly see where those fibers are all mingling together, and you get a nice shine, a nice looking result, which can only become better with time and use, as the friction from using it helps keep and seal those leather edges in. In my case, I'm going to be using a small rivet here. Now, this is completely optional, as this will hold cards perfectly fine without it, but I've found that if you're not going to be filling your wallet too much, a rivet does really help at least give that front pocket something really sturdy it can use to grab hold of those cards. Now again, this is completely optional, so I didn't necessarily include it in the template. You could use a rivet, you could use just a couple of stitches, you could even stitch all the way up the side there through the whole thing, but I like this solution, which I find the most practical, the easiest and the best looking personally. But as I mentioned, you can leave it just as is, which is what I recommend if you're trying to do a 4-pocket wallet with my templates. And yeah, there we go. So the final step for every single build is going to be applying, for me at least, a leather balm. It could be a leather polish, but it needs to be something that will help condition, nourish and protect your leather. This is basically neatsfoot oil and beeswax. And as I mentioned, this will make my leather really nice and supple and really nourish it with the oil, as well as give it a nice little shine and a protective coat of wax. Just rub it in with your fingers using the heat from your hands to get those oils nice and penetrated, and then leave it to dry for a couple of minutes. 10 to 15 minutes is perfect, before buffing the excess off with a clean cloth. And there we go, guys. That is all you need to do to build yourself your own wrapped leather wallet or card holder. As you can see, my templates come in 4 different sizes, with the 1 slot, 2 slot, 3 slots, which is the one we made, and 4 slots for the card holders. So loads of choices there. The 1 slot is incredibly simple, doesn't use up a lot of leather, and is really great for storing, I'd say 5 to 6 cards. Now in this case I'm only putting 2 in, but it's a very simple one. The 2 slot, I think it probably is becoming my favorite of them all, to be honest. It's very simple and yet can accommodate a silly amount of stuff, a really silly amount of cards. It's surprising. I'm only stuffing 2 in here, but it does actually take on much more than just this. It looks great, at least I think so. I'd love to hear your comments in the description, sorry, your thoughts in the comments below. And finally, the 4 slots here, I'll show you the 3 slots afterwards, but the 4 slots is the one that will take obviously the most things here. And I'm going to show you just how easy it is to fill up using just, I believe it's 5 cards here, but also going to be sticking in some more stuff. And yes, it's a bit rigid at first, and that's normal with all leather products, but with time and use, it adapts to your whatever use you're putting it in. And again, I'm loving this, and just look how sturdy it is. It's not budging. I've only got a few cards in there. Once I put all my stuff in, it's going absolutely nowhere. And finally, here's the 3 slot card holder that we made throughout this video, and again with that little rivet in the front, which is totally optional but really cool to have. There you have it, guys. This is how I build this 3-pocket card holder out of 1 simple piece of leather. I really enjoyed making this. I really enjoyed designing these templates, and I love how they turned out, especially the 2-pocket card holder, sorry. I think it really does look good, but either one of these have their uses, and I'm looking forward to be able to use them a lot in the next few weeks and months to come. I really hope that you guys have been able to enjoy and follow this along with me, and will consider picking up one of these template packs for yourself. And if you're not ready just yet to make the investment, don't forget that hitting the like button, subscribing, or simply sharing this video on social media really help me and my channel grow, and help me provide you guys with some more content. In the meantime, hopefully you've enjoyed, and I'll see you very soon for some more leathercraft.